I don't know if you follow your local police department on Facebook, but if you do, it might be the case that you're getting a kind of twisted mirror world version of what's actually going on in your area, because a new study shows that there is some significant bias going on in terms of what these police departments are using their Facebook pages for. Apparently, according to this study, local law enforcement agencies have significantly overrepresented Black suspects on their Facebook pages, and those practices reinforce racial stereotypes about crime. This was published last week in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. They looked at 9 years of posts on the Facebook pages of nearly 14,000 local police departments. So this is very all-encompassing. Altogether, researchers found about 100,000 posts that mentioned the ethnicity of a suspect in a crime. Roughly 1 in 3 of those posts mentioned a Black person, but Black people represented just 20% of the people those departments ultimately arrested. So there was a gap, and the gap was like 50%. That is a significant difference, and that would be bad enough by itself. But you need to understand that a lot of local news basically just runs with whatever the police are talking about. They take the literal words used by the police department and make their news accounts about that. And so if you have a bias on the Facebook pages, then the media is gonna have a bias as well. People's perception of crime and what crime looks like, who's perpetrating the crime, also will be biased. So these ripple effects could be really insidious, Bridget. What do you think?
Yeah, this story doesn't surprise me. You've really picked out a lot of the big pieces of it for me. One, we have local media really acting as stenographers for police, and basically just like repeating and parroting anything they say, whether or not it's true or not. I'm also not surprised to see that Black suspects have been overrepresented on their Facebook pages. Not to say that it all comes down to platforms and the way that they're run, but it wouldn't be surprising to me that they are overrepresenting Black suspects because they know that it's going to get more engagement, it's going to get more clicks, because that kind of anti-Black sentiment is really baked into a lot of these algorithmic platforms like Facebook. So I'm not surprised that they were like, oh, we'll just fill our Facebook pages with Black folks and just let our followers hate on them and just like have lots of wild conjecture about them. And then that trickles into local media who just reports that and parrots it as fact, whether or not it's true. It's a sad story. And I think it's really indicative of the way that media and social media platforms and police and criminalization all work hand in hand to continue to oppress folks of color.
Yeah, and even if you like forget the media angle, like this is what people will see. This is what people will share this stuff. This is what they'll come across. It will shape their view of what's actually going on. I want to mention just one more finding from this study because this is fascinating. Perhaps not shocking, but fascinating. They found that after measuring political preferences at the county level, that overexposure increased on average with the share of Republican voters in that county. So in areas where Republican candidates received just 25% of the vote in presidential elections, there was zero overexposure. So the ethnicities of the suspects being talked about was actually reflective of what ends up happening in terms of arrests. That's if there's basically no Republicans in the area. If the Republican presidential nominee got 75% of the votes, this is a very red area, it was about 25 percentage points. So significantly more than the average. So the more red an area, the more, look, let's just call it what it is, the racist bias in identification of suspects. Again, not super surprising perhaps, Bridget, but that is fascinating.
Yeah, not surprising, but it's interesting. It's interesting to have some hard numbers around this.
Yeah, and look, they came out with this. What do we think is gonna happen? We think that like whoever manages these Facebook pages is gonna like take this seriously. Like I would love for that to be the case. Like academia like this, it should produce actionable change. It would be very easy for these departments to look at the way they're talking about suspects and have it be a little bit more reflective. But the issue is that the effect is because of racial bias. The interpretation of how much we need to pay attention to this, how much change actually needs to happen, is also going to be filtered through racial bias.